Welcome to Global Guardian Studio Sessions. I'm Mario Decoa.
I'm Trent Underwood, and thank you for watching and listening to our podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment or a review, and that way you can stay up to date on all of our latest episodes. So today is South Africa.
Yep, that's the topic, our South Africa production. It's extensive because this was a big trip, and there's a lot of cool things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about COVID trip disruptions. That time, Coyote and I got tick bite fever.
Yep.
A black mamba kills a dog. Eating pizza and catching cobras. And finally, cutting off the horn of a rhino.
It was a pretty epic slate of things that we had happen down there in South Africa. And our timeline was February 2022 is when we ended up going. But the plan was to go in 2021, November. And this was still a lot of COVID going on. There was a lot of testing that you still had to do in some other countries in order to get back into the U.S. And Coyote managed to get COVID, like a week before we were supposed to take flight?
Not even a week. So, yeah, in order to get into the country of South Africa, and many countries at that point, you would have to take COVID tests and show proof. It was a big process for traveling, very hectic, very, create a lot of anxiety. You would have to do it within a 72-hour period.
Yep. To show that it was not currently in your system.
Yeah, negative. So we did exactly that. We went to a local place. We got our tests, we got tested 72 hours before our flight. And the next day it came back that Coyote was positive.
Yeah, I remember he came into the office and was like, I don't think I have it. I think I'm good. And we were all like, whoa, stay back. And then he went and got the test. He's like, yeah, I'm positive. And we were like, okay, well, now we have to replan all of this, move this back. I mean, we immediately jumped on the horn with our fixer, Mike Veal, who we'll get into in a little bit, and said, hey, man, Coyote's got COVID, so we're going to have to push this back. What is our ability to do so? Because Mike's a busy guy.
Yeah.
And it ended up being that February timeframe when we could make it happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of players involved in this trip. In that particular timeframe, we were actually going to meet up with the Belliston family because we had done a big Rhino campaign where they won a trip to Kariega, to South Africa, to hang out with us. This was during 2020 that we had this competition, and they raised a lot of money for saving the rhinos and for the Kariega conservation campaign. And the plan was, okay, cool. Once we can travel, because that was peak COVID when we had that competition campaign, they'll go on the trip. And sure enough, 2021, they opened up travel with these restrictions. And at that point, unfortunately, they had to continue with that trip because of their schedules. And unfortunately, we had to cancel the trip.
Yeah. And, it all worked out for them, and it worked out for us to be able to make that trip to South Africa. But it's always something.
Yeah. Do you remember that moment? Because I kind of remember. We're downstairs. All our bags are packed. We're good to go. I mean, 3 days before getting on a long haul flight, right? We're packed, ready to go. Do you remember how you felt like when you got that word from Coyote?
Well, if I remember it, we had some productions in October right before, and I think we had one in September. So I was kind of like, all right, well, this is actually not too bad because we're going to get a little bit of a time window, a little bit of a break. We'll pick up in February. We'll have more time to flesh out episodes, more time to flesh out how we want to film. Because if I remember, we came hot off of some productions and we were kind of immediately into pre-pro for South Africa. So it ultimately was in our favor because we had more pre-production time. We had more meetings. We changed some concepts, changed some ideas. And I felt that personally, I was more prepared when we went in February than we went in November mentally. Like we had all of our stuff and pieces and parts, but it was kind of like, we just came off another production. Let's get into another one. And this one being far away and in a place I hadn't been. I had never been to South Africa yet. So I think it all worked out.
Yeah, it definitely worked out. There was a little bit of frustrations, but that was the first time that we've had to essentially cancel a really big trip like that. Of course, the goal of that trip was to film a conservation-centric episode on the efforts of Kariega Game Reserve and Global Conservation Force in saving the rhinos in that area, which became a year-long endeavor for us.
Yeah.
I think a little longer in terms of our campaign.
Well, and it ultimately ended in a big fundraiser, which we'll talk about later on out in San Diego. So.
Yep. Yeah. So, people involved. You've mentioned the first person here, so why don't you take that on?
Yeah, Mike Veal. So you had met him right through Instagram. Is that?
We met him during our 2020 campaign when we were doing the Ask a Biologist. They reached out to us.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys met Mike Veal, who runs Global Conservation Force, which is an entire team of people in South Africa and in other parts of the world as they're expanding that are protecting reserves, protecting nature, protecting animals. And these guys are well-trained military-like in how they operate. Because a lot of the places they're in, they're dealing with people with weapons. They're dealing with poachers that have no regard for anything other than getting their target, which in our case in South Africa was rhinos. So Mike is the head of that, a phenomenal guy, very well put together, very well spoken, and was a great fixer for South Africa. We were skeptical though.
Yeah, we were skeptical at first, and we'll mention that.
Yeah.
But Mike turned out to be amazing at helping us in production, but more so, I really respect Mike tremendously in his efforts. Every time I see stuff of his on Instagram or message him, he's doing something. He's somewhere around the world, and he's like boots on the ground, anti-poaching.
Yep.
Dangerous stuff that unfortunately nowadays, there's still a lot of poachers killing rangers. That happens all the time. So it's a dirty world, and he's in it, and he is trying to make a difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Natasha, you can explain a little bit about her. That was one of his closest confidants in Global Conservation Force.
Yeah. So Mike Veal, Natasha Frolander, Vice President of Global Conservation Force. We met her at the same time that we met Mike in person on this trip. So she was with us, and she helps him out in all types of endeavors. I mean, he's got a fairly small team that's the core of the Global Conservation Force, but he has lots of partners throughout the world.
Yeah, and then Lindy Sutherland, she is the CEO and family owner of Kariega Game Reserve, which is one of the largest game reserves down in South Africa.
In the East Cape area.
Yep. A lot of different animals there that we got to see. And she's great. She's all about the conservation and about expanding Kariega and connecting the game reserves to create the corridor between different reserves, and working with the locals to do so in a positive way. Yeah,
Lindy was at the core of connecting the campaign that we had set out in 2020, and then ultimately accommodating us. She opened up Kariega Game Reserve to us to be like, hey guys, do what you want, film what you need to film. So she has always been very, very accommodating to us. And I should mention real quick, this is the second time that we've been to, at least that I've been to South Africa and Kariega Game Reserve. So we established a good relationship the first time. But Lindy is crucial in the efforts of the conservation campaigns at Kariega.
Yeah, and then William Folds. I'll let you go into a little bit about him since he's a biologist and wildlife vet.
Yeah, Dr. Folds. Man, he's a legend. You often hear people say like, oh, that guy, you're a legend. And sometimes I think they say it and it doesn't apply. But Dr. Folds is a legend for many reasons. He's a wildlife field vet, so he primarily works at the different game reserves, and he's out in the field doing work on elephants, zebras, lions, whatever, you name it. He's on it. But he's kind of famous for a incident that happened at the Kariega Game Reserve where a rhino named Tondi, along with two other rhinos, were targeted by poachers. Two of the rhinos were killed by the poachers, and then Tondi was left for dead. They literally hacked off the horns. She was still alive, barely. But Dr. Folds was one of the vets on the scene that basically helped to save her life. And eventually, through some really crazy and innovative like grafts and surgeries, they saved her life. So Tondi is directly affiliated with Dr. Folds, and she is currently alive, and she's thriving, and she's had several babies since that poaching incident, which is really cool. But
and we did get to see her and one of the babies at one point, which was pretty unique.
Yeah, Dr. Folds, I mean, dude, he was the star of our episode. I remember when we first met him. Do you remember he came to dinner at Kariega, and we went over the game plan for what we're going to discuss in a little bit of this huge rhino procedure that we're going to embark on and do and film. And he sat down with us, and I was a little intimidated because, not intimidated, but a little nervous, because sometimes when I meet people like this, I don't know, I kind of don't want to say something stupid. So I'm always just like, and I just want to listen to their stories. But anyways, so well grounded. I remember this. He mentioned he loves rhinos because to him, they're the closest thing we have to dinosaurs. And even though they're not related to dinosaurs, not even in the same lineage, what he meant was their size. And they do look prehistoric, which is cool.
And the armor that they have is very thick. You know, their skin is thick, and it has a texture like you would imagine a dinosaur would likely have had.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense.
But yeah, Dr. Folds, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about him when we get to that part. And then, of course, we've got our herpetologist friend, Tyrone Ping. Man, we connected to him through Instagram. I did, because I was like, hey, I want, I've seen his stuff in the past. You know, us herp nerds, we kind of know each other through either in person or like on Instagram and social media. So I've seen his stuff. And we got him on board as our on-site fixer and herpetologist.
Yeah, really cool guy. He was with us the entire time at Anton's, running around looking for all kinds of different animals, and he knows where everything is at. And super, super intelligent herpetologist. He's got a great book that he worked on, field guide. And we were there when he had just released it, so we got to get an early copy of that before it went out. So, yeah, we'll get into to him a little bit more, but It was a great time working with him.
And then finally, we got Anton Roberts. Anton is another herpetologist, and I mean, you could kind of call him an overall like fixer. Yeah. Right. He gets stuff done. He lives in the KZN region of South Africa. That's where we eventually went to his accommodations and hung out there with him. He does reptile rescues. I mean, he's kind of had his hand in a lot of different things.
A lot of productions. Like he was at dinner every time he had a story about some famous actor or some big production he was part of. And so I think he's probably pretty well known in the production world and in South Africa for making connections. Oh, yeah. And he knows his animals very, very well.
Primarily reptiles, which is cool. And yeah, I mean, he was super accommodating. And yeah, I mean, with exception to Lindy, we met all these people for the first time on that trip. And as usual, this is several years later, we keep in contact with them. We've become friends with them. Ultimately, why we love traveling is because of these friendships that we make.
Yeah. And these are connections that last forever. I mean, we keep in touch with most of these people on a regular basis. And for me, it was the first time meeting all these people because I had never been to South Africa. You guys had been to Kariega before. So yeah, it was a great first experience.
Man, Dr. Folds as a Global Guardian guest. Yeah. That needs to happen. And Mike Veal, I mean, yeah.
I think we had even like said that when we were in South Africa, well before we had conceptualized any podcast, like, man, this guy would be a great person to sit down and interview.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we are.
Okay. Locations. Why don't you set up the locations of the trip?
Yeah. So had a couple that we went to. East Cape, which is where the Kariega Game Reserve is. Kind of our travel there was from Columbus, our base, to Atlanta to Johannesburg, which is that Atlanta-Johannesburg flight was, I think, 16 hours long.
One of the longest Delta flights out there.
It was a challenge because at like hour 7, you're like, I'll go to bed for a couple hours, and you wake up and you're like, there's still 5 more hours. And it's like, okay, this is going to be tough.
Yeah, it's a brutal one.
So yeah, we get to Johannesburg, stayed one night there. and then flew to
Port Elizabeth.
And then that's where we drove to Kariega Game Reserve. I was super jet lagged on that drive still, like because of the time difference, like when we were going to Kariega. So as we showed up to Kariega, I was a little woozy. I know Coyote was too. He was struggling with needing to take some melatonin to get adjusted. But yeah, once we got there, man, it was epic. You know, it's not too far from the sea, and you know, we stayed within the game reserve, which that house I think is typically reserved for. It's not part of their regular like rental or accommodations, right?
No, that's one of their that's one of their accommodations. I forget the name of it. It's like one of their outposts. But yeah, anytime we stay at Kariega Game Reserve, like they treat us really good, and they give us this entire compound that's fenced in, and we're literally in the predator zone of the reserve. So if you step out of that fence, there's lions and leopards.
Yep. Yeah, we had as you said, it was a compound, had a pool and a separate kitchen. We had a chef, Lingani, who was amazing. Like the food was always top notch. Every time we would eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, it was well prepared, well done.
Lingani, shout out to Lingani.
Yeah,
she was our South African mom during that trip, making sure that we got all our meals.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could go into Kariega, or we could just list off the rest of the locations, but I mean, we could probably go ahead and dive into some Kariega.
So let's just quickly, East Cape, KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, short for KZN, and St. Lucia, which is within KZN. Those are the primary places that we were at. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, pre-production for this, we prepared for this trip in 2021 in that November timeframe, and then we had to bump it up to 2022 February. I mean, we were ready to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
nothing too special.
Yeah. For big productions like this, as we're preparing for Thailand and Indonesia right now, we're usually going for a larger haul of episodes because we're gone for a longer period of time. It's a higher expenditure in a budget, and we need to capitalize a little more on our time there. And so we try to have a lot of pre-production meetings and almost a meeting for a single episode. Whereas some of these smaller trips we might do in the US or to Costa Rica, we might pack a couple different things into one meeting. And that's what's super important about these big trips, especially one where we were backing it with all of this fundraising and eventually the fundraiser in San Diego. There was a lot of pieces and parts. So that's just kind of a process that we always do for these big trips, is more dialed in meetings for each episode in order to be prepared. So yeah, I mean, we were on top of this one, especially due to the sensitive nature of what we were going to be filming with cutting off a rhino's horn. That's a touchy subject for some.
So let's start off with the East Cape portion, right? Because that was linear in terms of what we did. I want to review the first time we met Mike, like in person, and our experience with Mike Veal. As you said, we flew into Port Elizabeth from Johannesburg, and the whole goal was for Mike to pick us up and then drive the 2 or 3 hours to Kariega Game Reserve.
Right.
We told them that, well, we've got a lot of gear. We always say that. A lot of checked bags. And he was going to be responsible for, renting a vehicle that I think, I don't know if it was under our name or whatever it was. We were going to pay him back, but he was responsible for renting the vehicle that was going to shuttle us to Kariega. So what was that vehicle that he ended up getting for us?
It was a small hatchback, and we didn't know he had Natasha with him. So there's 3 of us, 2 of them, which fills out a whole hatchback. That's 5 seats. And we had, I think, 2 Pathfinders, maybe 3. We had 3 carry-on Pelicans, 1535 Airs, which fit in a bin. And I think we either had 1 or 2 of the...
2 Pathfinders, for sure.
2 Pathfinders. And we had the 2720 Pelican, which is a bigger unchecked bag. And we were like, this isn't going to fit. So we had to put things on the roof. We had to strap everything down. I had a pelican between my feet, and I had my backpack on my lap. We managed to pack in, but that was a 3-hour tight ride.
Yeah.
And I remember when we walked in, we're like, oh, we were all joking around. We were like, I don't know about you, Mike. I don't know. We need a big vehicle, and we got this little hatchback.
Yeah.
We'll see how things go. I mean, purely joking around. We knew Mike was a great guy, and
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. That was my first time meeting him. So I did, and I told him this. I was kind of like, well, as a fixer, I don't know if he kind of dropped the ball on that with the car. But to his defense, this is definitely to his defense, South Africa, Africa in general, with many countries in Africa, things don't go as planned. And he did reserve the proper vehicle, but that vehicle wasn't available. And even once we were there, and I remember he went back up to complain, there was nothing they can do. And that's just how South Africa is, and lots of African countries. You just kind of have to roll with it. And we eventually learned that even with scheduling the Rhino procedures and stuff, which we'll get into, you could have everything planned for weeks and months, and then when it comes down to it, yeah, it's just how it goes.
Well, and when I knew that Mike was really good, and especially at being a ranger and being alert, was shortly after we had pulled out of the airport. He was going over safety protocol because we had all the bags on the car. He said we're a bit of a target because they obviously know we have stuff.
Yes.
And he's like, listen, if you guys are my spotters. If you see someone behind us getting out of the car, if you see cars trying to swarm us, let me know. I'm going to do my best. And so we're like, oh, like, I mean, I've never been in this scenario where someone had given this rundown, and we get to a light before we get on the main highway towards Kariega, and there's a car in front of us, and every single person gets out and starts walking towards us. And Mike's like, yep, nope, vroom, takes off around it. We're like, that was fast. You gave us the safety briefing and something already happened. So yeah. I was like, okay, he's on it. You know, it's an unfortunate rental car scenario, but hey, he's vigilant, and we learned a lot about Mike on that drive. He was basically talking the whole time. All 3 hours was
great podcast.
Yeah, it was a Mike podcast. Yeah.
But yes, since that trip, there is when we go back to Africa at some point, Mike is always going to be with us. We will hire him not only as a great producer / fixer helper with productions, but also simply from the safety standpoint, he is on point. Yeah. He knows what to do in emergencies. He's got the contacts. And unfortunately, in countries like that, that could be, that's a tricky part. Some areas are not safe for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we didn't touch on was the gear that we have here in production. The reason why we had quite a few bags is because we were on safari vehicles and we needed tripods because at the time we didn't have kind of that gimbal system that we used for Jaguars. So we were shooting with tripods off the safari vehicles. So that's why we had so many Pathfinders and so many bags.
As we've said, we will always have tons of gear. That just happens. As we're preparing for a trip right now, and it's not really a big trip, but we're still going to have a lot of bags that we have to check in. So, anyways, we are cruising down to Kariega with all our bags rigged to the top of this little hatchback vehicle. We're all cramped in, but we made it. And at that point, the adventure begins. So we get to the Kariega Lodge. What was your first impression of the little outpost there?
Well, as I said, the first time being to South Africa, so everything, the environment was new. Every country has their own style of buildings too and structures, and so this was unique from a lot of the places I've been. But yeah, I mean, it was great. It was a well put together compound. Felt like home. It was going to be like our little place for the week. And I was excited to get in it. I mean, I was ready to get into a safari truck and just go. Yeah. I'm like, I want to see lions and giraffes and rhinos. Like, let's get out there.
And of course, it wouldn't be a trip without, opportunistic reptile encounters. So what happened that first day as we were there, just kind of hanging out, meeting new people, seeing some old friends, and just kind of hanging out. I was in my shorts and in my Keens sandals.
Yep,
that's when I'm in what do we call that? Civilian mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just chilling.
Dad mode, civilian mode. Yeah. I was, well, we were having like a little bit of a pre-pro meeting with some of the guys from Kariega and going over like what the week would look like. And we just heard this loud like crash or bang down on the ground. And we're like, what was that? And we run over to where it was, and a boom slang snake had fallen off the roof.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty highly venomous snake, and it just fallen off the ceiling. And while we're having a meeting,
yeah, there's this. So the lodge is kind of a little bit open air, in that they have these nice French doors, whatever, that they just usually keep open, especially to like the living room / dining area. And right by that spot, they do have a water drain that's attached to the roof. And yeah, a boom slang just kind of fell down from there. A boom slang is a highly toxic venomous snake in the Colubridae family. They're really unique looking. This was my first time actually seeing one in person. Their fangs are in the rear of the mouth. So they usually don't bite a lot of people because, number one, they're very flighty and elusive. And two, if they do bite someone, they have to actually like chew the fangs into the skin. However, if bitten by a boom slang, it's really bad because there's no anti-venom. Yeah. Boom slangs are one of two colubrids that are considered deadly to humans. So they're a snake that, yeah, definitely leave alone. But of course, I did not leave them alone.
You went and grabbed it, and we had to do some photos and stuff before safely releasing it somewhere off compound.
I mean, that was my activation mode of just like, snake, run. It was going back into the gutter, I remember, and I just barely grabbed its tail. And then we just like finessed it out. And I was like, oh man, this is, I think, was it the male or the female? Boom slangs are dimorphic in colorations, in that the female and the male have different colors. But anyways, boom, there's my first boom slang of the trip of ever. So got the hook and we got pictures, and then we released it not too far from the lodge, actually. We just released it there because they're naturally supposed to be there. No one was necessarily upset that it was there, but they didn't want it like so close to like the dining area.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one pillar away from where we were eating.
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know, because there's no anti-venom, what is a treatment for a snake like that?
Well, boom slang venom is highly like hemotoxic, so it affects your blood. It destroys cells, like just bursts them. And one of the symptoms is you start to bleed from like your nose, your eyes,
all of your orifices,
any hole potentially. I mean, it's and the venom sometimes is very slow acting. You often don't even feel anything at first, so you might be like, I didn't get envenomated, and then an hour or two later, you're starting to bleed out. But because there's no anti-venom, if you're bleeding out, you've got to like do like blood transfusions, and I mean, you got to get to the hospital. I don't know what the survival rate of these bites are because they're fairly uncommon, but certainly a snake you don't want to get tagged by when you're out there.
Yep.
But yeah, that to me was welcome to South Africa.
Yeah.
I was like, cool, got a boom slang, first day, check, I'm happy. And let's see. A few days later, though, we did get another boom slang.
Yeah.
Which
they were
is
a little
cool.
bit more easy to find, I guess, than we thought that they might be.
No, remember, a few days later, this is not in any linear order, there was another boom slang in the same spot.
Oh, that's right. That was it was kind of like tucked underneath, and we were trying to get that one out too. Yeah.
So at that point, everyone knew that I was like the snake guy. So I remember, I don't know where I was, but someone was like, snake, Mario, snake, Mamba. They said Mamba. And I was like, Mambas don't range here, but maybe it's a Mamba. So I just run over, and there is another boom slang, which was the opposite sex of the one that we got first. So very clear that was a breeding pair. That's why they were hanging out there. So I released that one in the same area as the other one, which is pretty cool.
It's sweet to be able to see both sexes.
Yeah. Okay, so boom slangs aside, we were there for a rhino procedure, right? We were there to film a conservation piece on the efforts that Kariega and others were doing with white rhinos and black rhinos. So, Trent, talk about the anxiety of scheduling these procedures.
Yeah, we obviously were planning on removing a horn from a white rhino and relocating that to a different part of the reserve. And we were doing that pre-production meeting when this boom slang encounter happened. And they said, hey, we are also going to perform a procedure on a black rhino where we're going to put in this new device inside of the horn without having to remove it. And we're like, would you guys like to add this into the mix? We're like, sure, sounds great. But what does that schedule look like? And when are we going to do these procedures? So that's when things got a little concerning, because they're like, well, we got to do it towards the end of the week based on our staff, our crew, how everything operates, because it required a helicopter, multiple vehicles, and probably about 30 some people to pull off taking down a rhino, tranquilizing it safely, getting it down, and performing these procedures. So it was kind of towards the end of the week when this was going to happen. And that's always a concern for us, because we like to have buffer days to know before we fly, we have a day or two in between when that main piece of an episode ends, in case we need to do any pickup shots, or weather was a factor, or we couldn't find an animal, or whatever the factor may be. We want to have a little bit of a safety net. But they assured us we're going to get it. It's going to happen. We know exactly where they are. So just trust us. William Folds was like, it's all going to be good. We're gonna get what you guys need, and we went with it. And ultimately, we did get the procedures. And it was quite a process, as we'll get into.
The procedures that unfolded, I mean, I would say that was some of the most run and gun filming that you and I have ever done.
Yeah, very military-like.
Yeah.
I mean, from the second we had the safety briefing to jump, I mean, we were in the trucks, and yeah, it was to see the helicopter flying over where all these radios are going off. We're waiting for the call, waiting for them to spot it. And then as soon as we show up on the first rhino, it's just organized chaos.
Yeah. Organized chaos. Yeah. Let's see. Thinking back at that moment, we had no control, right? We literally had no control of the situation. So we were just filming it as it went, right? You're getting Coyote's reactions. We're getting each other's reactions. And then at some moment, we jump off the vehicle and boom, we're running towards the white rhino. That was the first procedure we did. And I remember going through the vegetation and then boom, there's the rhino like right next to you. You're like, wow, this is a huge animal. And it takes several people to kind of, after it's been tranquilized, to gently roll it onto its side in a safe manner. And at that point, everyone's doing something. People are taking blood, people are taking samples, and then of course, the cutting off of the rhino horn. Now this is
before you get into that horn, we had a little bit of a struggle because there was not as much ketamine as they thought.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I was down in front of the rhino, like doing a low shot while Coyote was by it, and it just wiggled up and reared up, and I fell backwards, and it started to take off left. I was freaking out because I was like, I'm down on the ground, and like this huge rhino's right in front of me. And they had to give it a little bit more ketamine, and then it got up, and they were able to bring it back down again into that spot where we ultimately removed the horn. But for me, that was like an intense moment because I was just in the path. I'm like, if this rhino walks forward, like I got to move quick. And on top of that, because it was in the bushes, those guys with the chainsaws, I had multiple chainsaws come within inches. I mean, they're just like, like flying with chainsaw to the bushes, and I felt like my leg almost got cut off 2 or 3 times.
That's right. Yeah, that's super intense, man. I mean, you don't really know how big a rhino is until you're like on foot next to one, because usually you're in a vehicle. Yeah. Chaotic, but as you said, it's like organized chaos. Now, the process of cutting off the horns of rhinos intentionally is controversial. But it's a necessary thing to do in certain parts of the range, especially in this part of the range where poaching is still rampant. Even in reserves that are protected, poachers get in. And Mike told us stories of how poachers get in. And it's often there is inside people. There's also helicopters and technology used that they get into these reserves and do their stuff. But anyways, the goal is to with a chainsaw, cut through the keratin of a rhino horn, which is the same stuff your fingernail is made out of. And you do it at the base, so you're not going like into the tissue or into the root. Unfortunately, when poachers kill rhinos, they go into the root, into the soft tissue, because they want the mass of keratin, right? To them, weight is important. So they're not just going to cut off the tip. They're just going to go for all of it.
And that's why ultimately Tandy nearly died, because they went all the way in. And
correct.
Bled out, basically.
Yeah. I think oftentimes people are like, well, why doesn't a poacher just keep the animal alive and cut off the horn? Well, number one, you've got to have the right drugs in order to sedate a rhino. And number two, that's a process that sometimes takes too long, but it's greed. You want as much as you can. That
we also learned too that there's some racial and political issues surrounding the rhinos as well. They don't really care because they don't see them as like their rhinos or Africans' rhinos, depending on who owns the reserve and whatnot. So we learned that there's another deeper level, some of that as well, that goes in part.
There's a lot of politics and a lot of other aspects in this whole world, but the fact was, we were cutting off the horn of this rhino. The procedure was fairly quick. You take the chainsaw, you cut it off. Eventually, it will grow back. So there are procedures every now and then to, recut the horns. What does that do for the rhino? Well, these rhinos live in reserves, so they have it a little bit more cush, right? They're taken care of. They're not necessarily too much fending for their life, but is it going to affect the rhino's everyday life? Potentially. It's going to know it doesn't have a horn. So that's probably one of the cons of this procedure. But the pro is, well, you keep this animal alive. And at that point, you need all the genetics possible, right? When these populations are dwindling because of poaching. They cut off the horn, and then we had a really powerful moment where you filmed Coyote holding the horn, right? Explain that moment, because I thought that was a cool moment.
Yeah, well, the Rangers had finished the procedure, and we were getting ready to get it up in a trailer, and they said, here's the horn if you guys want to do and talk about it or give a piece. And yeah, it was a really emotional moment because everything happened so fast during that procedure. Everybody was working, doing exactly what they needed to. We're on higher energy, your adrenaline's pumping, so you're not as emotional in that moment. It's very procedural. And then when we went over, we walked away from kind of the scene, and we sat there and kind of absorbed that moment. And Coyote got very heartfelt, and we realized what we had just done to this animal by removing its horn, removing its identity, basically, all to stop poaching. And so there's a moment of sadness, and there's a moment of frustration that we even had to do that this world exists around this rhino that creates this negative nature that had to happen. And it was an intense moment of peace and frustration at the same time.
Yeah. It's clear that the people involved don't want to do this, but it's a last resort. So
they'd rather see the rhino alive, like you said, than like in a Tandy situation or dead.
Yep. Well, that day, we accomplished the procedure, and then we had to get ready for the next day, which was the black rhino procedure.
Yes.
The black rhinos, they live in a different part of the reserve because of their habitat preference, because of their, general behavior and nature. And I would say the black rhino procedure was a little bit more intense because that's when we had the helicopters. Because the black rhinos live in more like shrub habitat, it's hard to find them. So Dr. Foltz went up in the helicopter. We put a GoPro on his rifle, and man, we got a fantastic shot of him tranquilizing the black rhino from the helicopter. And at that point, same thing. Boom, you get the vehicles out there, you rush out to the spot, jump out. And what was unique about this black rhino procedure?
Well, we weren't going to remove the horn. It was a new technology that someone on their team had been working on to basically drill a hole that was about 2 to 3 inches into the horn, insert this piece with an epoxy that is colored like the bone, keeping the rhino horn intact and very little impact to the horn itself. And they're trying to find a way to eliminate that procedure and still protect the rhinos at the same level of removing the horn.
Yeah.
And I believe it was the first time they were putting it in.
I think so. I think this is one of the first times that they've done this procedure to a rhino. But the whole point was to try new technologies to help track these rhinos and prevent them from being poached. But yeah, that was another successful procedure. I mean, once again, to be in the vicinity of such a large animal, and I remember you're just jumping over here and I see you there, and then I'm jumping over here getting shots of them taking the blood, and you're getting shots of Coyote saying stuff, and there's Dr. Folds. And the one cool thing I liked about the black rhino procedure is that quickly, with all these procedures, there is a drug that is given to the animal that basically counteracts the sedative, and in seconds they're back up.
Yeah.
So I remember Dr. Folds was like, boom, put it in. He's like, go, 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 go. And everyone just runs out. And you guys got down to like the safe zone. And I remember you popped the drone up. And Dr. Folds was very curious to look at the drone footage and see how the rhino's doing. Does it get up properly, and is it okay? So do you remember what he was telling you when you were flying the drone? I
don't exactly remember, no.
But he was interested in what, making sure that the rhino got up
he wanted
properly,
to make sure that
right?
it was walking, like it was handling the coming off the sedative, and that it wasn't falling over, and that it was going to proceed off into the bush. So I don't remember verbatim what he said, but that's ultimately what we were doing, was making sure it walked away fine. And it did. Headed off into the bush, followed it for a little bit, and that was it, sent it on its way.
Yeah, and that was the end of our Kariega Game Reserve portion of the trip. That was ultimately turned out to be a fantastic video that we released out on the Brave Wilderness channel. Continued the Save the Horns campaign. I mean, you've got one of the shirts on for Save the Horns. Eventually, we met Mike and his team in San Diego for a fundraiser event, and our rhino campaign was a great success. We raised a lot of money. In fact, the money raised helped to release 8 more black rhinos into this new reserve section at Kariega Game Reserve, which was fantastic. And you know what? That's the ultimate goal for the Brave Wilderness episodes and channels. If we can make a difference, not just in touching someone's life with like them viewing our content and getting educated, but we're making real differences, and I think that's fantastic. So our Rhino campaign is one of my favorite campaigns that we've done. And now we're off to a new campaign, which is great.
Yep. And we'll even put some links down below too, because their campaign is still ongoing with Kariega, if someone wants to donate, because ultimately they are trying to connect those corridors, which is expensive land acquisition, and prepping that for rhinos. So we'll put that link down there.
Yeah. I mean, look, any efforts is always ongoing, for sure. And the key thing that you said is land acquisition. Kariega wants to create one of the biggest corridors to attach Kariega to other reserves and create this huge biological corridor that allows the rhinos to kind of go back to their natural range. Any help, anything helps, that's for sure. All right, moving on to the KZN portion of the trip, KwaZulu-Natal region. This is cool because this is my first time in this region. I've never been to, I've only been to the Eastern Cape and Johannesburg in South Africa. So now we went to the KZN portion. What was the goal for this region?
Yeah, KZN was a new area for me because I hadn't been to South Africa. So this was all brand new. And we were going for a variety of different species. We specifically were going for a spitting cobra because we were going to do an episode where it spit in Coyote's face. A black mamba was top priority as well. This is their area, their zone. And chameleons, and if we come across forest cobras or any other animals on that property or surrounding properties while we were herping, then those would be episodes. So yeah, it was an awesome, Anton's place is great in the middle of the bush. And there was some things that happened immediately upon getting there.
Yeah. I would say this was highly anticipated for me because finally I'm going to be in a part of Africa that is in range of black mambas, green mambas, and all these cobras. I mean, this is the top. These are some of the most toxic snakes in the region, in the continent, and we're going to be in range. I was super excited. Not only that, but KZN it's a little more edgy, right? From a safety standpoint, Mike immediately was like, this is certain areas we're going to be driving through. I remember we landed in Durban, right? So from Durban, we drove to 2 or 3 hours to Anton's. And he's like, yeah, these areas can be kind of dangerous. So once again, luckily we had Mike Veal with us. But yeah, it had a different vibe. At Kariega, we always just stay in the reserve, and that's like our little world. But in KZN, now we're outside of the reserves. Now we're actually like passing communities and we're going into town. So I thought that was kind of neat. And yes, we get to Anton's, and immediately I think I got very lucky this trip because snakes just started to appear. And we started to check into our little lodges on Anton's property. And Natasha screams out, "Mario, snake!" And that's where Tyrone comes in, because Tyrone met us there. And both Tyrone and I run towards her accommodation. And sure enough, in the bushes next to her little lodge, there's a forest cobra. So boom, that's my first cobra ever. And it was starting to get dark, right? It was kind of evening. So Tyrone and we captured the snake, and we temporarily kept it in so that the next day I could do some cobra training. But anyways, that was the introduction to Anton's, and I was like, cool, this is the spot.
And for people that are not a big fan of snakes, that would probably be your worst nightmare, to know that right outside your door is a cobra.
Yeah.
But to us, that's freaking cool. It's like, that's dope, man. Like, there's a freaking cobra right outside my room.
Yeah, no, that was sick. And basically, I was like, this is the spot. I think I mentioned, I was like, I think I could live here. I could live on Anton's property, no problem.
Yeah, I think this is most of the places that when we go to another country, I could retire here.
Yeah.
Mario's retire list.
St. Lucia is one of them, and we'll mention St. Lucia in a second. But that was our introduction to Anton's. The next day, I do remember specifically, I said, "Hey, Tyrone, I've worked with cobras in captivity, but what I would like to do is take this forest cobra out and kind of do a little demonstration to see. I want to see how they like act, how fast they are." And we did that in the morning, which was cool. So I got a feel for their behavior. And then, of course, we released the snake a little further away from the accommodations. But yeah, that started our KZN part of the trip. Let's see. What did you think of the accommodations there at Anton's?
They were great. They were not bad at all. I mean, I feel like in a lot of these remote places, there's kind of just a standard setup. Like, it's nothing over the top. You're going to have your bed, hopefully an AC unit. Some places don't, but most of the time we're good. Good bathroom and shower. I mean, for me, I just want to make sure I have a comfortable bed, because when you're out hiking and you're filming, like, nothing is worse than laying in a bed where it's just springs in your back. Palo Verde, Costa Rica. And and it's really hot, so you want to be able to have AC. And at Anton's, we found out that they do rolling blackouts in South Africa, because we had come back to charge some batteries in the afternoon and everything was out. And we had dinner with candlelight because it's out for a period of time. They turn on different zones of the country. So interesting.
Yeah, that was part of it. It reminds you that, you're definitely in a developing country that you have to deal with those things. Now, I think we kind of, these trips, I think we only had, 7 days as well in the KZN region, and we had to accomplish however many episodes we had planned. So we hit the ground running. There's like not really much time to just like kind of hang out and acclimate. It's like, no. So one of the first things we did was we went to a rhino orphanage and hung out with Lako, the orphaned rhino. And man, that was the first time that we got to pal around with a little rhino. And I love that guy. He was a little tank.
And even cool. For how small it was compared to the rhinos we had filmed in Kariega, it's big and strong. Like, I mean, for a small rhino, it's still pretty big. Yeah. I mean, there was a couple times where I almost got like slammed in it with the swinging its head and its horn pushed me into the fence at one point. So yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah. And after filming with Lako. I can't. Lako.
Yeah. I think it was Lako.
After filming with him, we got a call we're going to go to lunch. But the one thing I think I didn't mention is that Anton and Tyrone do reptile rescues in that region, particularly Anton. And when Tyrone's there, he helps out. So we get Tyrone gets a call. He's like, hey, there's a black mamba situation at Anton's mechanic. So we drive over there and we get to a scene where, well, there's a dead dog just out in the field. And then there's a hacked up mamba, black mamba, that the mechanic killed because, well, he saw that the dog was killed by the mamba. And that was pretty intense because that happened immediately. It's like, all right, let's go to the spot. Let's see the situation. And there it was.
Yeah. And, I wouldn't have expected the dog to still be laying there. But yeah, the dog was still there. And it's a very big realization of the power of that snake. And I think he said it was dead within less than like 5 minutes.
But let's be clear. This is the situation. The dog attacked the mamba.
Correct, yeah.
The mamba was there. The dog attacked it. In the process of the dog trying to kill the mamba, what is the mamba going to do?
It's going to bite.
It's going to defend itself.
Yeah.
So it bit the dog, and now at this point, you've got a dead dog and the mamba, some injuries from the dog, but now the owner of the dog, the mechanic, I forget his name, he hacks up kills the mamba, and not good for anyone. But I remember distinctly, like, all right, what is this situation? Is it the mamba's fault for killing the dog?
No, I don't. I mean, it's the mamba's going to move freely as it wants through the bushes, and I mean that you set up a house like humans live in their territory, right? This is the human wildlife conflict that is ongoing in many places all over the world, but. If you're going to live in an environment that's going to have black mambas, expect black mambas. Yeah. That's just the nature of it. And
it's tricky. But this was ground zero of human wildlife conflict because I did speak to him further, and he mentioned something that he had a bunch of dogs running around his property, but he did mention, he's like, the lifespan of my dogs are maybe 1 or 2 years. So this happens quite a bit. Now, once again, I feel bad for the dog. I feel bad for the mamba as well, because if the dog was the one that initiated the attack, went up to that mamba and engaged it, that snake was defending itself. And that's the tricky part. You can't to tell someone that their dog that they love died, and that actually, well, if you would have kept your dog maybe controlled, and it could have prevented this situation. So that's the tricky part.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was my first time seeing a mamba in the wild, and it was a good sized mamba, but it was dead. And that was, once again, that was big realization that this is real. These things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Luckily, it wasn't a person.
Yeah, well, and this guy he was a Range Rover, Land Rover repair mechanic, like specifically. So he had an enormous amount of snake environment, like all the pieces of metal and rods and pipes. Like it was a snake's dream. So it's no surprise to me that there was mambas running around there.
Such a great point that you brought up, Trent. When you do live in areas where there are snakes frequently, right? You can do certain things to prevent them from kind of hanging out on your property. And that is, do not create hiding spots for them, right? And this area had tons of debris and garbage and stuff that snakes will love to crawl under and chill. They're finding shelter. So that's one thing you can do. Just remove any debris and stuff where snakes could take shelter on your property, and that might reduce your chances of encountering them.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was, second, third day of being in KZN. Yeah. We went back to Anton's over the next few days. We filmed a spitting cobra episode where they had a Mozambique spitting cobra that they rescued, and we used that to do a demonstration to the spitting abilities, meaning projectile venom, right, into Coyote's face. And that was a cool moment because I saw you get very nervous at one point.
Yeah, I was. I always like people always ask me like, is there ever anything I've ever been scared of or any animal that was like I was nervous around? I said only one. I was like, I've been around a lot of dangerous things, and the spitting cobra was the only one. And it was mainly because I was talking to Tyrone right before we, removed the bucket and let it go. And he was like, yeah, we knew someone that died within like 5 minutes. It sprayed at him, and he like, took a deep breath in, and he went into anaphylaxis shock and died within like 5 minutes. He didn't have an EpiPen. Yeah. So we have EpiPens for these situations. But then I was like, all right, take the bucket off. And like my heart just started pounding because I'm like, well, like, I don't want to breathe in. Like, I don't want to like, because, you don't want to have scratches. Like we were going over, you can still get envenomated if you have cuts or you get it in your mouth and you have an open sore or your eyes. And so, yeah, there was a nervousness because when we're normally working around a mamba or a fertilance, like you can judge that snake a lot better to be like, okay, well, it's building up some strength. It's going to strike, or, we're keeping our distance. Whereas a spitting cobra, I mean, it can spit 4 or 5 feet, like, so what does it do? Very quickly, it turns around and goes up my leg, all over my arm. It's all over the camera, all over the batteries, like immediate. I'm like, and I felt like my heart was like pounding out of my chest because I'm like, do I have any cuts? Am I good? Did it get on my eyes? And like, I remember after we finished, I was like, get the wipes out. We're cleaning every piece of equipment, like all of it. So yeah, I mean, I was a little nervous around that only because
not a little, a lot.
Yeah, I definitely was. Yeah. Now going back, if we were to film one again, I would be fine. But, it was just that initial, like of the unknown of like, okay, well, if that venom gets in one of these cuts or something, like what's that going to look like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you had a good reason to be a little nervous. That thing was spitting venom like crazy. And when we're saying spitting, what it's doing is there's a number of different snake species that have modified fangs, and they can project the venom through these holes that are kind of forward facing by contracting their venom glands, and the venom like squirts out quite a distance, up to 5-6 feet away. Fantastic defense mechanism. Venom in itself, right? If that venom gets into a predator's eyes or mucous membrane, it will agitate it, right? And that's the whole goal, is just to try to agitate the potential predator of the snake. Because remember, this is a defense that the snake is doing. It's not doing this to capture prey.
Right.
It's simply doing this to potentially scare off the many predators that snakes have. And so the goal is to temporarily cause, disruption, irritation. But the dangerous part comes in because venom needs to, in order to truly affect a person, well, it goes in the bloodstream, right? So venom is primarily injected into the bloodstream of a prey item or a potential predator, and that's where damage is going to really be done. So as long as you don't have, like you said, any like cuts or open wounds, you should be okay. If you get the venom in your eyes, you definitely have to wash it out immediately. There could be temporary blindness, but that's the tricky part, because you never know how your body's going to react as well. Because the example that you brought up earlier, and I want to be very clear about this, is that person was in trouble because he was allergic to the venom. It wasn't necessarily the venom properties itself killing that person or affecting that person. It was simply having a allergic reaction, like you can to anything, to a bee sting, to other things, and you go into anaphylactic shock. And of course, you don't know if you're allergic to venom until you have venom on you.
Right, exactly. So that's why I felt a little more secure that we have 2 EpiPens on us. But yeah, I mean, just hearing that, it's kind of like if you're a drag racer and you're about to go press the gas pedal and you're like, oh, hey, the guy that just went before you died. You're like, like your mind just goes to a different place. So that was kind of where it was at.
But it was all good. It was all good.
Yeah, we were all right.
We got a cool episode out of that. And that Mozambique Cobra was then released because, once again, that was a rescue that they did. And we got a few more episodes after that. And then we had like a day off, which is rare. What did we do? Well, Mike, Natasha, Tyrone, Coyote, you and I, we went to this, we drove 3 hours to a really cool location called St. Lucia. I had never heard about this spot before. until Mike was like, hey, let's go to this spot. And Tyrone suggested it. So St. Lucia, it's right on the coast of KZN. So it's the East Coast, right on the water. And it's such a cool little town, settlement, whatever you want to call it, where humans and wildlife like live hand in hand. As soon as you enter like the St. Lucia, as soon as you enter St. Lucia, there's this huge warning sign that has a crocodile, a leopard, a hippo, a shark, what else? Snake on it. It's like this triangle. I got a picture of it. It's very famous. And it's like, to me, I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. I want to come to St. Lucia and hang out.
It almost seems like it would be a fake sign. It's like, really? All that stuff's here? Yep, it definitely is.
Yeah. And Tyrone was telling us that, it's very common for the large hippos to just come out and walk around in the streets, in the parking lots. It's common for crocodiles to unfortunately attack people. And there's a ton of different snake species, green mambas in particular, that I was very interested in finding. We kind of hung out there for the day. And then we had dinner or had lunch in this cool pizza joint. And then something happened during that lunch.
Yeah, well, we had ordered pizza. Me and Coyote had a couple beers, and we get a call that there is a forest cobra in a shower at somebody's house. And as you were mentioning earlier, Anton and Tyrone do rescues to remove animals and put them in a safe space. And he was like, do you guys want to go? Me and Coyote were like, well, we don't want to be around a venomous snake or helping out with that when we've had a few. So you were like, I'll take off and I'll go with Tyrone. And you guys got a little cool bit filming there in the shower with the snake. It was but it was like tucked in the shower, like coiled up there, and you guys were able to remove it. But yeah, we had. Here's the thing, like when we go to lunch, like when it's lunchtime, and this place had really good pizza, and our pizza was just about to come out, and I'm like, if I leave this pizza, I know it's going to be an hour, and this pizza is going to be cold, and I'm going to have to come back to it. And I'm like, and me and Kai just looked at each other like, nah, well, because we had already seen a couple forest cobras. We're like, let's just eat this pizza and enjoy this lunch. And it was good because you and Tyrone got to have fun. We got to have lunch and chill, and we were all happy.
See, I'm glad you brought that up because you were blaming it on the beers, but no, it was a
little bit of both because you shouldn't be around any sort of venomous thing under any sort of influence at all. So
yes, correct. But
even if it's one,
it was more so the pizza.
You don't mess with lunch, man. It's just you don't, especially when you're in the field. It's like it's a big staple. Got to make sure you have it.
Well, yeah.
And we had already seen. I'd already encountered a forest cobra, or a couple. So if I hadn't seen a forest cobra, then I'd be like, I want to go and see it. I want to go check it out. Yeah. A lot of animals I'm okay like seeing a couple times. Like I don't have to see them multiple times. Now there are a handful that I do like to see as many times as possible. But okay. I was like, I saw the forest cobra. Yeah,
priorities. Your pizza was there, and that was your priority.
That was my priority.
That's okay because I had a great time with Tyrone.
That's good. Yeah,
because immediately Tyrone's like, Mario, let's go. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And this was super cool because this is probably when you think of a snake rescue, this is as classic as it gets. He got a call. A hotel nearby was like, we're prepping a room for check-in, and there's a cobra in the bathroom. And so we jump in the car, and when we got in the car, I said, hey, Tyrone, can I catch the cobra? And he's like, yeah, Mario, you can do it. And at that point, I was like, heck yeah. So we get to the spot. Once again, classic. The owner is like outside, and she's like all nervous. She's like, it's in there. It's in the room. We get in the room, and we kind of look around, and we walk towards the bathroom. And sure enough, in the shower area, there's a hooded up forest cobra. And so, because Tyrone told me I could catch the snake and bag it. I had my snake hook, and I will say this, it was probably one of the smoothest snake rescues that I've ever done. Not that I do a lot of cobra rescues, but I kind of expected a little bit more action. And that's just a testament to Tyrone and I. We want to make sure we do everything safe. So using my snake hook, I collected the little forest cobra. Actually, it wasn't little. It was probably about
fairly big,
maybe 4 feet. got the forest cobra from the bathroom. Then I started to walk backwards out the bathroom door into the living room. Tyrone put the snake bag down. I gently put the cobra, nudged it into the snake bag, went into the snake bag. We tied it up. And then within 10 minutes, we were back and I was eating my pizza.
Yeah. So it went a little bit quicker than we thought. But whatever happened with that footage, like, did you, I don't think it wasn't enough for an episode.
No, unfortunately, I did not film that properly because I was catching the cobra. I wasn't even paying attention to like filming. I looking back, I really wish we would have, if I had the DJIs like I do now, I would have filmed it properly, but I think you guys gave me like a GoPro and that's it. So unfortunately, I didn't film the process, but it's probably one of my favorite moments of the trip was helping Tyrone catch that forest cobra. And then what we did was we went out and we released it and we did a little photo shoot. Mm-hmm. So we got to see
and
it.
We did get a lot of good footage there. You got some cool photos.
We got some cool B-roll of it and it was a win-win situation. No one got hurt. The snake survived. We released it. And one of my favorite moments from the trip.
Yeah, very, very cool place, St. Lucia. We got to go back and explore more there.
Yes, because they do have a population of rhino vipers, which is really unique. Mm-hmm. That I think covers most of the trip.
I mean, there was a lot of little details, little shoots. There was the chameleons. There was that really cool pizza spot that was like, it was like a California, LA restaurant in the middle of the bush, like right outside of Anton's, with some of the best food and best pizza we've ever had. So that was super random.
Going to KZN, a reoccurring theme was good pizza.
Yeah, surprising. That's not a place where I would think pizza would be thriving, but
I ate a lot of really good pizza. Yeah. One more thing I want to bring up. Remember, there's a snake that we caught at Anton's. It's very unique. What was that snake?
Twig snake. And we were filming the chameleons, which envision this. You have like a driveway with a field to the left, like farmer's field, and then you have like high trees and these like smaller green bushes that the chameleons would be on, and you would see those at nighttime. So we're out walking down this road, spotting for them, and we were using Anton's truck. It was out there as well, and in the middle of finding some of these chameleons, he looks up and there's a twig snake right above us while we're filming. And so he climbs on the roof of the truck and pulls it down. And this is the same as a boom slang in that there is no anti-venom for it. You bleed out of every orifice if you get bit. And it is blood transfusions in order to survive it, which is an immediate trip to the hospital. So yeah, that was a pretty bizarre. It's like the boom slang was kind of an interesting find above us, and then so was the twig snake. And
I wanted to bring that up specifically because earlier when I mentioned boom slang, I said that it is one of two colubrids that are considered dangerous to humans, and the twig snake is the second one. So we got both of those species on that trip, which was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. That was South Africa, but it kind of doesn't end there because there is a bit of a post-trip that I want to discuss.
Yeah, Africa came back with you.
Africa kind of came back with us. Now, remember, because this was the time where we still had to do COVID tests.
Right.
We had to get back to Johannesburg, and we had to have enough time to take a COVID test and determine that we are free of COVID to board the plane and get out of the country, get back to the U.S., So that was chaotic in itself. But I remember distinctly, we were on the airplane back and Coyote was sitting next to me. He was like, I don't feel so good. And for Coyote to say that, it kind of, it means he doesn't feel well. Well, we get back to the States and Coyote's like, I think I got the flu or something. I don't know. And he's like, I've got this weird open sore on my leg. And we're kind of looking at it like, oh boy. There was something that we both remembered. When we were at Anton's, Tyrone and Mike had warned us about tick bite fever. So we had looked up what tick bite fever was, and basically it's a bacterial infection that's transmitted through ticks. And when a tick bites you and it's infected with this bacteria, the bite site becomes, well, an open sore, like an open wound. And so it didn't occur to us until Coyote showed me that little open wound. I was like, oh, dude, that might be tick bite fever. We had texted Anton and everyone, and they're like, yeah, it's tick bite fever. So Coyote goes and gets treatment at his primary care provider, and it's pretty standard. You just get these antibiotics, and it'll cure you. Well, a week later, I woke up, and I've never have felt this way before. I woke up, and from the previous day, feeling fine. I woke up like feeling I had the flu, and I also had like swollen lymph nodes, like in my groin area. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what's up. Like I did not work out recently. Like all my muscles are sore. And then I was like looking around. I was like, oh, there's a little like open lesion in an area that's in my groin area. I don't want to. And I was like, oh man, I got tick bite fever.
Yeah, you got something, yeah.
So yes, I recognized quickly that I think I had tick bite fever quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't have a primary care provider established here yet. So I went to like a bunch of urgent cares, and I went to one urgent care, and they were like, imagine this, I come in and I'm like, just, looking kind of, looking sickly, I'm looking weird. I'm like, hey guys, I just got back from an Africa trip. I got tick bite fever. I need you guys to give me antibiotics. I know I have tick bite fever because my friend had it too.
And they're probably thinking, you just came back from Africa, you have a lesion down to your groin, and my friend got it too. They're probably like, right.
I was not painting a good picture.
Yeah.
This urgent care, they're like, why don't you call the CDC? And I was like, no, I mean, can you just treat me? Like, I know exactly the antibiotics I need. They denied me care, which was very interesting. I called the CDC and it took me forever. I don't even know. It was like the Ohio CDC or some branch. And I finally got to someone. I was like, hey, I've got tick bite fever and I just need antibiotics. And they're like, go to urgent care. I'm like, I just did. They're like, they denied me. And the CDC people were shocked. They're like, urgent care should not deny you. I went back to the urgent care. As I was arguing with the people to, take care of me, I got a call from a nurse at Coyote's primary care doctor, and they're like, "Hey, we could see you." The doctor's got an appointment the next day, and so luckily I got to see him, and obviously he knew the situation, and he prescribed me the antibiotics, and within like 2 days I was good to go. But yeah, that was tick bite fever, and that was kind of a little interesting journey because I think it's the first time that we've gotten back from a trip that we've had some type of like tropical disease or something that we've been dealing with.
Yeah. I'm glad that I managed to skirt that scenario.
Yeah. Did you know Tyrone got it really bad as well?
Yeah. All three of you guys.
Yeah, because I had messaged him maybe a few days later or something, and he had to go to the hospital. He said it was the worst tick bite fever he had ever gotten. So
yeah, had to get fluids and stuff, right?
Yeah, clearly it was something that.
But it's better to have that than like Lyme disease, which is found here where we're at in Ohio.
Yeah. What's the moral of the story? I don't really know. Maybe
check for ticks more often.
Check for ticks. I mean, I was covered in tiny ticks. That's for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, that's South Africa. Now we're down to our quick one question answers. Trent, real quick, this was your first time in South Africa. What did you think?
It was amazing. I mean, to see two different sides of South Africa was really cool, to be in KZN and Kariega. It's really tough to describe being in front of some of these giant animals in person. I've always seen them in a zoo growing up, and to be we had a moment one sunset, which this, goes into my second most rewarding moment, but the entire pride of lions were by the trucks on our way home, and one by one they passed within like reaching distance of the truck. And one of the rangers was even like freaking out, and he like works there, and he was like, "This is too close. This is too close." I'm sitting there like, "Yes, this is amazing!" Like, one by one, the whole family. So, it's a lot of special moments on that trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Most frustrating moment.
Ooh, most frustrating moment. We didn't really have many frustrating moments, but I would say, I don't know.
Okay.
There's not one that comes to. I mean, it was a pretty solid trip. I mean, just having to deal with travel overall, that's just tiring. So, but that's just a normal part of a travel to that destination.
Okay, fair enough. And then finally, how would you rate the food and accommodations?
100%, 10 out of 10, A1. Both locations was great. We had Lingani and KZN, so it's always nice to have food prepared for you and not to really have to think about where we're going to go eat, because nearly every production we're finishing up, we're tired and we're like, all right, where does everyone want to go? And we all have different preferences on food. So that was great. And then we go to KZN and we had our little California pizza kitchen right there, and Anton's food was amazing, and a couple other little places. And of course, there was a McDonald's. So
we did do a McDonald's.
The savior of the Golden Arches. All right, your second time in Africa. What were your thoughts?
Second time in Africa. Look, I have to say this, for any animal lover, Africa, the continent of Africa, is a dream destination, right? So the second time in South Africa, second time in Kariega, was still special. I'm never going to give up the opportunity to see these animals in the environment. But I think what I was most excited about was for that KZN portion of the trip, because it was so reptile heavy in terms of diversity.
Cool. What was your most rewarding moment?
Lots of rewarding moments, but I would say that Cobra catcher. Capturing that Cobra, rescuing it from that hotel room, that was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, I could tell your excitement when that happened, and when we went and did the photos. Like, usually when you're really excited, you have just a constant glow of like, your face is just always like locked in a smile. You're like, yeah. So definitely saw that. Your most frustrating moment, what was that?
I'm going to go with you in that there wasn't anything that really stands out. I would say there was some frustrations in the beginning when we were determining the days that we're going to do these rhino procedures, and as producers, we have to be we have a goal, right? And we're not just there just for vacation. So it's like, dang, are we going to get this really, really, really important episode that we traveled halfway around the world for? We spent all this money. So that was a little frustrating in the beginning, but luckily everything was taken care of.
Yep, I agree. Food and accommodations rating.
Yeah, like you, Kariega Game Reserve, always on point. Lingani was always cooking us some great food. I would say I probably ate the most pizza ever of any trip, and that was unexpected. I would say the pizza at KZN was top notch, so 100% for me.
Yeah, it was overall a phenomenal trip. We knocked out all the episodes that we wanted and more. Came back with a whole new set of friends, and I can't wait to go back to South Africa. I mean, it's a trip that we have already been pinging back and forth with Mike to revisit. Like, okay, what's beyond South Africa? What's the next? Is it Namibia? Is it Zimbabwe? Is it Mozambique? Like, what is that expansion? Because Anton has a lot of connections in all of those areas as well. We know April Conservation Wild is doing a lot in Namibia. So Africa is a massive continent, and there's so much more to explore. It's just finding what is the story that we want to tell.
Yep. Tip of the iceberg in Africa, that's for sure. I'm ready for the next adventure. Yeah. Madagascar, maybe?
That would be awesome, man.
That would be
we have
sick.
been talking about that. Well, we hope that you all enjoyed this South Africa episode where we went over everything on that trip and all of the fun that we had. And if you haven't listened to some of our other podcasts, be sure to check those out on YouTube, Spotify, all the other podcast networks. Leave a comment, leave a review so that you can stay up to date on all of our upcoming episodes.
Yeah, what Trent said.
We'll see you next time on Global Guardians.
See ya.